After her surprise win of Best in Show at Quiltcon 2022, she donated the $5,000 winning prize to charity. The charity is called Save the Children, and it felt right that a quilt made from sorrow should help allay the sorrow of others. I got that right from her website, and it was so wonderful. Today, I'll have a chat with Hilary Goodwin. Hello and welcome to the Quilter on Fire podcast. I'm Brandy Maslowski, a former firefighter turned quilt professional. As a quilt teacher, speaker, and judge, I travel the globe to bring quilters more joy and less overwhelm. Not too long ago, the quilty life I now lead was just a dream. After many lessons and a lot of hard work, I've transitioned from juggling a day job and a quilting business on the side to becoming a full-time quiltpreneur. I started the Quilter on Fire podcast to create a vibrant community of quilters, artists, and makers. Each episode brings you inspiring stories, insights, and the pure joy of guests from all over the world. If their stories uplift you and spark joy, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and ignite that creative fire within you. My guest today is Dr. Hilary Goodwin. She is an ER doctor who received a Bachelor of Science and a doctorate at the University of Washington. She is a textile artist and quilter based in Northern California with roots in North Carolina and Washington State. Her work explores modern themes while paying homage to rich tradition. Botanically dyed fabric, repurposed t-shirt quilts, grain sacks, as well as modern textiles all show up in her work, which is often hand-quilted. Her work has won prestigious awards and has been exhibited internationally as well as featured in multiple books and magazines. One of her community quilts was acquired in 2021 by the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit. She won Best in Show at Quiltcon 2022 with her quilt called 2020 Vision, and we will have a chance to explore the heart-wrenching story behind that quilt. Her quilt Inset Starburst made the cover of Quiltcon Magazine in 2025, and this year she will be the featured speaker at Quiltcon for 2026. I'm so thrilled to have her on the podcast just days before that event. So let's explore the story of Hilary Goodwin. Hilary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandy. I'm really honored to be here.
Oh gosh, I'm excited to have you on the show. And we are airing this podcast just a few days before QuiltCon, but of course we're recording it much earlier. But I love to start by taking a look back at where you got started. So when do you first remember putting stitch to fabric?
I come from a long line of makers and quilters. And so knitting and stitching are something that I grew up with. When I was growing up, I have a long line of girl cousins on one side, and we all made wedding quilts for each other. So when we'd each contribute a different block, and as I was growing up, I was on the younger side, I would usually cross stitch or applique a block, and we would send it, and one of my aunts would put the quilt together and deliver it to somebody on their wedding day. I have a wedding quilt that all my cousins made for me. So that was kind of an introduction. And of course, I have quilts that my grandmothers made, my mother made. So it coming around to stitching, I've always sewn some of my own clothing. And then I was introduced to this wonderful thing called the Modern Quilter Guild. And it really sparked my interest in this modern quilt art form that obviously has taken off for me.
Yeah. And so do you feel that there were certain people in your life that had a real creative impact on you early on?
Yeah, my parents come from fairly humble backgrounds, and my grandfathers were loggers in the Pacific Northwest. And while they were cutting down big logs, my grandmothers would be making their own clothing and making quilts. So I looked to them for inspiration. Definitely my mother. She picked up quilting during the 1970s quilting revival. In fact, when we lived in North Carolina, I recall her hand quilting. I still have quilts that she made for me during that time period. So those were definite inspirations. And then, of course, all of the amazing modern quilters. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And traditional quilters out there. I'm in awe of so many quilters that are currently doing the most amazing work. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are your memories of your first quilt?
Again, having kind of been introduced to the Modern Quilter Guild through Flickr, the old day Instagram, I guess. I was always fascinated by the sweaters of Keith Fassett. They're really colorful, and then got introduced to his quilting books and ended up buying for my first quilt a quilt kit of his off of eBay. Oh. And it was thousands of 2-inch squares. Oh. I'm anxious to show it at Quiltcon, but it was put together, and he used some of the backside of the fabrics. And that felt so subversive to me. Like, I don't have to use the front side. I can do whatever feels right. It gave permission to use these fabrics as your paint or your, so that was my first quilt. And then Malka Dabrowski, I was very interested in her quilts. I think I made a couple that were exactly like her quilts. And Anna Maria Horner at the time was very inspirational. So yeah, and then getting into my own design and all of that was a fun path.
Yeah, it's so great to be sort of inspired by the people who are doing really great things in the industry, right? And sometimes we're copying at first to learn those techniques.
Right.
And then we can branch out on our own, right?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty normal progression for people. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about your education and career path and how that all works together with quilting.
I'm coming off, ironically, because I'm coming off of 3 days of 11-hour shifts of really stressful work in the ER. And it's interesting. It's a nice balance. I believe all of us deserve a creative practice.
Yeah.
And I've had the conversation with some people that some people quilt because it's the only place in their lives where they feel like they can make everything make sense. Mm. They can make everything line up and look pretty when life may not feel that way.
Yeah.
But for me, I have to be so perfect in my professional world, understandably, because people want to have physicians who are very precise and do the right thing. Yeah. But quilting for me is an avenue for being imperfect. Mm-hmm. I don't really care if my corners line up. I care more about the story that I'm telling. And so it's a huge relief to come home from a shift where I may be taking care of somebody where I've had to tell them that they have cancer for the first time, or I'm taking care of a child who has suffered child abuse. And I can come home and put needle to thread, and somehow that kind of helps ease the stress of it all. So, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how your quilting blossomed over time. Like, how did you grow and change? You talked about recreating quilts that you've seen by others, but did you start off sort of traditional and gravitate to a different genre over time?
Yeah, I think I started with some traditional blocks, and then I was really inspired by the Modern Quilter Guild makers who seem to have a kind of modern art aesthetic. Yeah. In fact, I think, originally I was really inspired and kind of derivative towards other artists in other genres, and then migrated and realized, oh, no, this is about making my own designs and exploring my own way of putting things together. So, yeah. And there's something really freeing about that. I think as an emergency room physician, I'm a MacGyver of sorts, yeah. Because they don't teach you how to do everything with everything that you see. And so I take that same approach when I'm quilting. I would prefer to figure out how to make a circle, whatever way that might mean, whether it's an inset circle or a paper piece circle, or I think it's fun to imagine your own way of making things without necessarily following all of the rules. So that's part of my exploration and how I've made quilts too. And then also it's been a venue for me to speak to issues that are really close to home for me. So I believe that we spend hundreds of hours on each of the art pieces that we make in quilts.
Yeah.
And within that, they are imbued everything that we're feeling at the time. Sometimes those are beautiful feelings, sometimes they're hard feelings. But yeah, so I think each of my pieces tells that kind of story too, even if it's not as obvious.
Yeah. And just speaking to that, like, was there a defining moment when you kind of went from perhaps trying crafts to this is my thing? This is what I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
As a reprieve.
Right. I think I'm constantly, it's funny to have people say, oh, quilting is your thing, because I feel like I have so many things. I'm really into knitting as well. I tell people that I knit for relaxation and I quilt for excitement, which sounds so funny to some people, because I work with a bunch of people who are thrill seekers and, are ride motorcycles and do all these things. And I say I'm a thrill quilter. But yeah, so I knew that I liked telling stories through quilts. And again, there's a huge family history for me, so it feels somehow right to continue that legacy.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So let's take a little moment out of the creative story for a sec and find out, where are you living now and who are your loved ones that you share your world with every day?
Yeah, I live in the Sierra foothills of Northern California. We are very fortunate to live on a large piece of property. Most of our neighbors have cows and goats and donkeys. And so it's a very rural setting, but we're fairly close to both of the hospitals that my husband and I work at. So it's a nice retreat from kind of the chaos of our work worlds. I have 2 children who are now adults, soon to finish their graduate school and undergraduate schools. So they're in and out of our house. So yeah, that's who's at our current abode.
Okay, well, let's dive right back into the creative story and start talking about design, because we've mentioned already in this podcast that you're drawn to your own original design, creative process, doing whatever you love. So when you see something in the world that sparks an idea, how do you capture that? Are you pencil to paper, or do you take photos?
I am not a computer. I have used the computer for some of my quilt designs, but again, I use the computer for my work so much that I would say my quilts are heart first.
Yeah.
And then I try to think in my brain, how do I want to relay the message or the thing that I'm thinking about? And then typically, I mean, if I do a little bit of a sketch, that's pretty unusual, but it's usually start with an idea and then start cutting and sewing fabric together. Sometimes that works and sometimes it lands in the trash can, but that's okay. It's part of the whole exploration that's fun for me. So yeah.
Yeah. So fabric right on the design wall. And so where do you pull your color inspiration from?
Yeah, it's been a fun thing to put quilts together for Quiltcon, because I've got 24 quilts that will be showing, and putting and choosing the ones together make you kind of understand your work a little bit better. I was fortunate to be the guest speaker at Quilt SanFrancisco this last year. And so I got a chance to see the quilts together, because you kind of wonder, do these make sense? And it felt good that they seemed to make sense to me. But looking at my work, I'm kind of realized that I do a lot of monochromatic quilts. And then I was surprised to find a lot of pink in my quilts and purples in my quilts. Those aren't colors that often show up in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's kind of fun to play with uncomfortable things in your creative life, whether that be uncomfortable colors or different techniques that you're not used to. I think that can bring you down some fun roads with creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of a fun road, I guess I just want to hear from you in a nutshell. What do you aim to bring to the world with your quilting? Because you touched very slightly on the fact that quilting sort of is like a voice for you.
Mm-hmm. I hope to, I guess, tell my story. And I've evolved over time. I think there are a lot of people who are very concerned about getting into Quiltcon or getting into a show or winning a prize or getting in a magazine. And it may seem silly to say it, but having done that, I'm not sure that that necessarily brings a ton of happiness or satisfaction. In reality, the things that bring me the most satisfaction is in the making and in the telling my story. Whether anybody sees it or understands it or accepts it or gives me an award for it, that's probably the most important thing. And I would hope everybody could feel that and that their story is important too. And even if others don't understand or appreciate what they're trying to say. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It sort of speaks to the journey rather than the end result, right?
Right.
What are you getting out of it? What are you giving to it? And how is it affecting the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so having just said all of that, these next couple of questions seem kind of like, well, should I even ask them? But I will anyway.
Yeah,
so
sure.
What was your first quilt on display anywhere?
So I might be a little bit of an anomaly as a quilter because the only quilts that I've ever submitted to have been to Quiltcon. And that's in part because I feel like the Modern Quilter Guild is my home. And I'm also a really busy person. So I'm not somebody who looks to see what applications are due here. I've been encouraged to by certain organizations to submit quilts. But again, the more I do this, the more I realize, I'm doing this more for me. So the first quilt that I ever submitted, there were two, and it was at a Quiltcon, and it was at the third Quiltcon. I remember making a quilt just in time to submit for the second ever Quiltcon. And I just thought, ooh, I don't know. I don't think this is good enough. And I had a lot of people encourage me to submit it, and I didn't. And I, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Don't really regret not submitting it, but I did submit 2 quilts for the third Quiltcon. Yeah. And one of them went on tour on their, Best of Quiltcon tour.
Yeah, and I don't even think we need to say how well it's gone for you over the years entering Quiltcon, because we've seen your quilts, we've seen your quilts.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about some of those wonderful quilts in a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's dive into your website a little bit. Your website is hillarygoodwin.com, and
Correct.
Hillary has 2 L's.
Correct.
And so what will we find there if we head over to your website?
Yeah, so you'll find some really outdated materials. I'm a busy person, so I'm not very good at updating everything that's been going on or things that have won awards or whatever. But you will find a blog that's got some posts, a lot community related, and you'll see some of my work, some where you might have seen my work. Yeah.
Yeah. So community is something that you really care about. So tell me why.
People started quilting by quilting together on frames. And what an amazing thing that is. It's much harder for us to gather to do that nowadays. I think we have a good fortune of being able to do that to some extent online. So I'm grateful for the quilting community as a whole. I have participated in a couple of community projects that have been important to me. We did a community quilt for a woman who ended up having spinal paralysis after the day after she returned from Quiltcon. Yeah. We made a community quilt for her that she lives in the Netherlands, and that was quite fun. And then, yeah, recently you'll see a tutorial on the blog in honor of another quilter that I really admire, Laura Hartrick, who sadly lost her daughter last year. And I encouraged people before the last Quiltcon to make flowers for Persephone in honor of her. So yeah, I think community is really important. There's a lot of strength in community.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And this is, I think, also a good time to talk about the fact that if you ever do win any prize money, you give it away. So where does it go? Where does it go? And why do you do that?
Yeah, every penny that I get from quilting, whether it be from selling a quilt or selling a pattern or having a speaking engagement or whatever, goes to charity. And as you mentioned in the opening, I gave the winning money for the Best of Show to Save the Children, but I've also donated to the American Cancer Society, to Black Women Stitch, to the Trevor Project. I'm trying to think, I've donated to a lot of different causes over the years. And the same will go for any money that I get from Quiltcon. This Quiltcon will go to charity. It's the do good part of me. I went into medicine to try to help people. I'm really fortunate to be able to support myself and my family with my day job. Quilting feels like a good way for me to give back. And part of that is giving back through the money that I garner from it.
Yeah, that is so kind. I love that part of your story. So let's dive into, it's not even big news anymore because it was announced a year ago that you're the featured speaker at Quiltcon for 2026. So how did they reach out to you? How did it feel?
Yeah, I think I was surprised and really honored, as I continue to be surprised and honored. A little bit intimidated, I think, because it does feel like such an honor. And there are so many people that I really admire who have been featured. I'm excited to talk to the Modern Quilter Guild and to give my keynote speech. Yeah. I want to share my stories, and I want to try to inspire other people to do the same.
Yeah. And we're recording this podcast, of course, at least a month before the show.
Yeah.
But what can you tell us what you think your lecture will be about?
Yeah, it's going to be about quilt makers as storytellers and using this art form to tell your story. And I think people think of stories, they think of political messages, but I think it can mean so many things. I mean, people who are making stories for their grandchildren, for their sons or daughters. Yeah. You're telling a really important story of love. If you are coming up with a crazy, cool, modern technique, that's something that is a really important story too. One of my good friends who's a ceramicist, he says, work becomes art when it evokes an emotional response. Yeah. And sometimes that may be disgust, sometimes it may be awe, sometimes it may be joy. Mm-hmm. I hope that we can all imbue our art so that other people feel something from it. Yeah,
it's so good. And that leads me right into my next question. Is there a quilt or quilt project that's been most memorable for you?
There are many, and you'll get to hear a lot about them at Quiltcon. I think it's I'm honored to have a community quilt of ours be in the permanent collection of the Henry Ford Museum, and having had that shown at the museum was really exciting. Our quilt Nude is Not a Color, which was another community collaborative piece. Yeah, so I'm excited, to have that there. Again, just to kind of speak to skin color and white privilege and community and other people's experiences. It was fun to have other people speak to their experiences, participants speak and also to have that displayed at the museum. So, yeah.
So that's acquired as part of the permanent collection. But can you tell us a little bit about what inspired that coat? Like, why did you feel like you wanted to sit and give us that message?
Sure. It was a simple thing, again, Flickr days. I was, quote, friends with a lot of other makers online, one of whom, Bianca Springer, who now is a really good friend. We both were just in awe of this haute couture designer who also puts out some handmade projects and with hand stitching. And so we both were really involved with that. And on Flickr, she announced that she couldn't support this person any longer because they're not ready to wear, but their haute couture season displayed so many pieces that were in the color nude, which was a pale pink, which didn't represent her skin tone, nor the skin tone of most people in the world, to be honest. And she brought that up to the designer and was dismissed a couple times. And it really made me appreciate, wow, I didn't even realize how that might feel. And how would I feel trying to tell my daughter, try to explain that to my daughter. So we started inviting people via Instagram to contribute paper pieced patterns of kind of shirt dresses in their colors of nude. Mm-hmm. And it maybe represent them or represent somebody that they loved. And I had no idea what I was going to do with these. I just felt really compulsion to send that message out and to have people, the message was more important to me than the final product necessarily. Yeah. And Bianca was all on board with it. And I asked her, I said, would you consider posing for me for this quilt? And she said, sure. So she actually posed in a dress that she made. She hand stitched from this designer. And then I put all of these shirt dresses together to clothe this person on the quilt in various colors of nude to kind of explain that message. And I made it with no intention of it ever being appreciated beyond the message that I was trying to show. It was in my closet. And then I got a call from the museum and they said, we're interested in acquiring this piece, which was really exciting. Yeah. They ended up acquiring it during the middle of COVID. I was one of the first people in the nation to get the COVID vaccination. It was such a scary thing at the time, but so I was able to fly to Dearborn, Michigan and see it on display. It was really exciting. Sadly, the other participants weren't able to, but that was really fun. I'm very honored that it remains in their collection.
Yeah. It's such a great quilt. It really, walking in front of the quilt, I can only imagine. I'm just seeing it on the screen, but walking in front of it, I can just imagine it hitting you pretty hard. Like, wow, this is a message that really needs to be heard.
And the fun thing about it too, and I have to say that there's no way that quilt would have been acquired by the museum were it not for the art of Rachael Dorr, who did the quilting on it, thread painting, basically of a representation of an every woman, but also kind of reminiscent of Bianca. Yeah. When they displayed the quilts, they also had quotations from other participants, and who each had different, experiences with their own experiences of skin color, one of whom from Canada had lived in, South Africa, and another who was an immigrant to the U.S., an Indian American woman who was called the N-word on 9/11, and just so much. There was so much story involved in that piece. I was really excited that it could be displayed and with that story shown.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. A milestone for sure. Okay, so before we go to break, I have one more question. In your creative practice, what brings you joy?
I like trying new things. I like bending the rules and seeing where things may go. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's fun to explore different improvisational techniques. I have really loved hand quilting. I find a lot of peace in that. I have a beautiful traditional frame, and that's a gift to come home from a busy shift and then, put put a needle to poke things.
Yeah.
It feels really good to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing something on Instagram once. It was a little funny little saying, and it said, if you feel the need to stab something 1,000 times, start quilting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Okay, so right now we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk all about Hilary's studio space, some of the quilts, of course, and what's coming soon. We'll be right back. Have you ever looked at a workshop description and thought, that looks incredible, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that? If that sounds familiar, I want you to listen closely. I'm teaching at Quilters Affair in Sisters, Oregon this July, and I want to personally invite you to join me for a week of creative learning. Even if screen printing or art quilting feels a little intimidating right now, here's what we'll actually be doing. In Sunset Silhouette, you'll learn how to build a beautiful pieced gradation background, choose fabrics with confidence, and explore beginner-friendly free motion quilting, all in one satisfying day. In Inksations, first-time screen printers are absolutely welcome. You'll learn a simple, approachable process using black or white ink, and you'll finish an entire quilted topper in a single day. And in my 3-day stitch and style tote, we go deeper. Fabric painting, improv piecing, hexes 4 ways, and you'll design and complete a one-of-a-kind quilted tote bag with guidance every step of the way. These classes are designed for curious, thoughtful makers, not people who already have it all figured out. Registration is open now, and I would truly love to meet you in Sisters. Head to Quilters Affair and join me this July. And we are back with Hilary Goodwin. Hilary, can you tell us about your studio space?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. Having quilted forever in a very small spare bedroom. My husband and I converted our old garage into a really large studio. And really feel spoiled because I have a bunch of cabinets all along the wall, so I can store all of my fabric away from the light. I have a nice work table and a quilting table, and then a space where I can have my traditional quilting frame set up so that I can just, leave it there and come back to quilt. So it's a very special space for me. Yeah.
So what's your favorite time of day?
Yeah, my quilt, my schedule is very chaotic for work. It's not unusual for me to be working at 4 a.m. or to be starting work at midnight. And so I catch quilting when I can. I'm not usually quilting in the middle of the night or piecing in the middle of the night, but any time of day that I can get a spare moment is good time for quilting. And having a special space that I can retreat to is really wonderful. I know not everybody has that good fortune. I feel very fortunate. I still am living without electricity. We are waiting to hook up to PG&E, so hopefully that should happen soon. But extension cords seem to be doing the work for now. And I live in Northern California, so it's not too cold this winter. So yeah.
So what are some of the things that you integrate into your day for your own self-care?
I appreciate yoga. I appreciate walking. I used to be a big runner. I've run marathons and half marathons. My knees are not as happy with me doing that as much lately, but we have a dog who's a really naughty boy, but he likes to get out for walks. And again, we live out in the country, so walks are also a nice retreat. We love hiking. We have kayaks. We love kayaking. So yeah, anything outside is a nice retreat for us.
Yeah, all good self-care. Okay, so I'm really excited to talk about the quilts with you. So that's where we're going now. We've already touched on one really meaningful quilt. Nude is not a color earlier in the podcast. But tell us about some of your other quilts. Let's start with Pick Up Sticks. What's the story behind that one?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate to be asked and involved with the improv quilting Be Social, led by Leanne Haley and Stephanie Roll. And so for 3 years, I participated with them, not having even really known what a quilting bee was when they asked me, and not really knowing what improv was when they asked me. But getting cues from somebody, a monthly kind of task to say, we need you to use these colors and then try to show something that means depth. You know, that can be intimidating. Or show, let's see, circles, or, you know, I don't know, whatever the prompt may be is really inspiring. So I credit them with getting me inspired and started on the improv wagon. And so I figured out a technique, and I'm sure there are others who have kind of figured out it along the way too, but of doing inset strips without disrupting the background architecture of a piece. So it almost feels like painting, and you can do it improvisationally, and it can happen really quickly. So I made a quilt called Pickup Sticks using this technique, and it won Best in Piecing at one of the Quiltcons, and then have made several pieces, one called Escape Room that was also featured at another Quiltcon and then toured with the best of Quiltcon. So yeah, that is a fun part of my, quilting journey, is figuring out different techniques, and that being one of them. If you're interested, you can find some directions on Instagram and on my website, my blog, that explains that a little bit.
Yeah, so great to be part of a group and be so inspired.
Yeah.
But I don't want to quickly move on by Escape Room. So tell us a bit more about that quilt.
Yeah, that is a blue monochromatic quilt trying to show depth using this technique of inset strips. I have another one that permanently hangs in our living room. It's in black tones. It's called Escape Room 2. It's probably my husband's favorite quilt. I don't know if you find it. We have quilts hanging all over the place. I've trained my children well. They'll see an empty wall and they say, "Oh, I think there needs to be a quilt on that wall." But he has laid claim to that quilt, so that's hanging in our living room. But yeah, just another fun exploration, and that will be a quilt that will be at this Quiltcon too. So excited to share that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, and you'll find it on the website as well if you look in the gallery. It's really fun on the website. You have a little area called, I think it's called "You May Have Seen My Work," which is kind of a cute way to put it.
Yeah.
So let's get back into the story with another quilt called Golden Hour. Tell us about that one.
Sure. Yeah. Again, another quilt using exploration with some of my favorite odd tools. Again, I'm a MacGyver sewist. So my husband is a woodworker. He has a lot of great tools that I often steal from him. And so I was playing with inset circles and made this one. I actually did come up with a kind of a template, not specific, but just an idea online with a computer drawing. And then, just started making inset circles and making them all come together. It was fun.
Yeah.
Fun to explore.
You can find this on the website. I'm really going to encourage people listening right now to go to the website to take a look at this, because if you look at it, you can see that the gradations of color are really cool. It's like a variations of color when things are overlapping, and it's just a really cool quilt. It kind of seems like one of those iconic Quiltcon quilts that would be in the show if you went to Quiltcon. So definitely.
And that will be at the next Quiltcon too.
So, so you'll be able to see it this year. So that's great. Okay, so another one that I want to talk about is a quilt called Exclamation Point. Tell us about that.
Yeah, again, I'm an emotional quilter. Quilters reflect how I'm feeling, and this has been one that's been made the past couple of years, and it expresses kind of how I've been feeling. I think exclamation points are fun because they can express both delight and anger, fear, so many things, just strong emotions.
Yeah.
And I think the last couple of years have been filled with strong emotions. I intentionally made it using different, a lot of different skin tones.
Mhm.
And I am fortunate to live close to another amazing quilter who I was able to collaborate with on this. She did the long arming, Shashri Kubori, Ula Ludi on Instagram. So we did a collaboration on this quilt, and it's again meant to express, strong emotions.
Yeah.
However people want to interpret that.
Yeah. It's so good because sometimes you need to be hit in the face with the quilt, right? When you walk up to it, right? So
Sure.
We have a couple more to talk about. Before we get into some of the award-winning quilts or a quilt that was featured in Quiltcon Magazine, I want to talk about Blobberella. What's that one about?
Oh, fun. Again, kind of like anything is open. I think we feel like we have to follow the rules. And this is again one where blobs are fun. Let's try making some blobs and appliquing blobs. And I've made 3 in this series where I used little portions. I call it improv on the edges, meaning incorporating a little bit of improv into and in different ways into these blobs, and then putting needle turn appliquing them on and on together. The first one I did was almost looks a little bit like red blood cells, how red blood cells kind of like to come together when you look at them under the microscope. Yeah. The last one I made was called Disco Olives because the improv part of it is in kind of, it makes it look like the shape of an olive.
Yeah.
But just fun, trying different things, seeing, just having fun with it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the 2022 win. You won Best of Show at QuiltCon with a quilt called 2020 Vision. Now, I want to start just by telling you, when I walked up to it for the first time, I was like, we've just come through the first stages of the pandemic. And when I saw this quilt, I was like, this is what I'm talking about. This quilt is telling us a story. So why don't you tell the story in your words?
Yeah, 2020 was obviously a very challenging year for all of us, right? We've all been through a journey. And 2020, especially so, I'm an emergency medicine doctor. My husband's an emergency medicine doctor. It was soon after QuiltCon in 2020 that we all came back and things were shut down. Yeah. And for a lot of people, that meant the hard part about being separated and spending way too much of our time looking at the computer and being online, being away from loved ones. All of that was really hard for people, for us too. But for my husband and I, that also meant that we were going to work every day with somewhat limited PPE. We were recycling all of our N95 masks. Yeah. And coming home, not sure if we're going to infect our kids, stripping down when we got home, having taken care of people who were really, really sick, having some colleagues get really, really sick. So, and during all of that time, my dad, who was an amazing photographer and hiker, sadly lost his life. So it just was a really hard time. And I felt like, and I'm not a crier much. And especially during that time, it's just kind of like you're holding everything together. Yeah. And I made these kind of paper pieced inset circle eyes. What are we witnessing? Just kind of these eyes wide open. And then I appliqued tears on them because that was the way that I could express the tears that I couldn't shed, really. Yeah. And then I repeated 2020s in them to kind of express the Groundhog Day feeling of every day you'd get up and do whatever you're doing online, or for most people, but also sneaking in important words for 2020. For me, they were important words to me, or topics that were important during the time. I call it the Where's Waldo trauma quilt, because you look through it and you go, oh, I see that word. So yeah. And then I ended up quilting 2021 at the very end because I was hoping that we would come into a new year learning some lessons. And I'm not sure that, that happened necessarily, but that was my hope in doing it. When I made that quilt, it was a really hard quilt for me. I mean, I felt compelled to do it because I would come home from shifts and it would be my way of decompressing and writing. Writing, but quilting. But I had no expectation that it would get into Quiltcon, that it would win anything for Quiltcon. I was shocked, because it was such a personal story. And I think, again, that's the lesson to me for people is write your stories, tell your stories, whether anybody understands or cares. That's probably the most important thing to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great message. And like just seeing that quilt, it has a lot of harsh contrast in it, darks on whites, blacks and navies kind of thing. But then it draws you in because you need to see that hand quilting. You need to see those words. You need to see the year over and over. You need to see the message. It was like Groundhog Day when you repeated those messages. And it was just fascinating to take it all in and to read the words on the card as well and get that tidbit of the story.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there's one more quilt I want to chat about. It's called Inset Starburst, and it was featured on the cover of Quiltcon Magazine just recently in 2025. So tell me about that quilt.
Yeah, it was such a fun, joyous quilt to make. Again, trying to use this inset strip technique that I'd played with, just coming up with an idea. And again, I don't pre-plan things. So I made one in green, and I think the blocks were like 13 by 13. They made no sense at all because I wasn't planning it out. I just was trying a technique. And so it was fun to come up with that idea. And then also with I love Denise Schmidt, and to use some of her fabrics in there, and also with a challenge to try to use some patterned fabrics. We see a lot of solids in modern quilts. And so that's one of the things that I would like to work on, is to use more patterned fabrics in quilts. And so that was just fun. And it was so orange. It was like glow in the dark. I felt like at Quiltcon, I thought, oh, well, this one kind of doesn't belong, but in my mind, that's fun too, right? Like, let's try different things.
Yeah, and when you try something new, you never know. It ended up being a perfect fit to make the cover of the magazine. So great. Okay, so we're very excited to see you at Quiltcon, and I'm really looking forward to your lecture. But there's other big news coming soon as well. So you talked to me a little earlier about an art exhibit coming later this year. So what kind of a sneak peek can you give us?
And this is one of my joys and in this creative exploration is promoting other people's work, kind of discovering and promoting other people's work. And for those of you who might follow me on Instagram, you know that I have a love of vintage fabrics. And I came across some fabric through a friend who actually gave me some fabric that was reminiscent of ones that my mom made a quilt for me when we lived in Washington State. And I was able to track this couple down who made these fabrics, still alive and together. We were able to collect a large number of them, and we have an art exhibit that's coming up at the end of the year. Don't want to really reveal all the details, but it's been fun. There's something really inspiring about promoting other people's work and also letting the ego go. Like I made a digital pamphlet and sent it to a bunch of folks. And I think unlike promoting your own work, which I'm not really good at, but when you promote other people's work, if people say, nah, I'm not interested, there's no, you're like, oh, okay, well, let's just try with them.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to do that. It's really fun to see other people shine.
Yeah.
And to use your power in that way, or whatever power you have. But if it be that people know you as a quilter or whatever, just fun. I'm excited for folks to see that.
Yeah, and you are speaking my language because everything I try to do on this podcast is to lift up quilters and try to share their
Yeah,
stories, right? So
absolutely.
that's very meaningful to me. Okay, so what is something you're dreaming of doing in the future? What's your future forward?
I don't know. Have I peaked at Quiltcon speaker? I don't know.
No,
I
definitely not.
well, I don't know. I don't know. Everything, none of what I have ever done has been with a purpose of getting to a place. It's always just been about, making things that are important to me. So I don't necessarily have any goals of entering anything or getting, it's more just about, again, continuing to tell my story, continue to try to lift up others, continue to try to raise money. If people are interested in my quilts, come and talk to me. If we want to find a good charity to donate the money to, then, that's something I'm definitely open to. So yeah, just continuing the same, I guess, as what I'm currently doing. Yeah.
Okay, so now it's time for the lightning round robin. It's a series of rapid fire questions and super fun. So are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, what is your favorite tool or notion?
I think I mentioned it already. I love stealing my husband's woodworking tools. There are a lot of great things that you can use from there. So yeah.
Okay, and what triggers inspiration for you?
I think my emotions, what I'm feeling at the time that I'm making things. Again, whether that be delight or concern or whatever, everything for me comes heart first.
Yeah, inspires you onto that next journey.
Yep.
How many UFOs do you have going on at once in your studio?
Not very many. I did finish up some quilts for Quiltcon, which is fun. There's some quilts that have yet to be shown. So I'm excited to show those. But I think I have just 2 UFOs right now. So yeah.
So how many quilts will you have on display at Quiltcon?
Yeah, there'll be 24 quilts.
Wow.
24 quilts. Yeah.
It's so exciting. We can't wait to see them all.
Thank you.
What is a skill that you'd still love to learn?
I feel like I chose a good art form. They say that medicine is a practice, the practice of medicine. And I hold the same true for quilting. Mm-hmm. I don't think we'll ever have achieved, nirvana or achieved the best that we can be. I'm always striving to make smaller stitches with my hand quilting. It's intimidating to look at, gosh, these antique quilts that are so amazingly hand quilted. Oh my goodness. So if I could be like my foremothers and forefathers someday, that would be wonderful in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've already mentioned a few wonderful people for this question. Have there been a mentor or two along the way that's really influenced you?
Yeah, I was really fortunate to be a pen pal, or I should say an email pal with Gwen Marston during the last couple of years of her life. We communicated every week. And of course, her just do it, just get in there, and her improv kind of attitude was really inspirational. But also she was just a personality. She was just a fun ball of energy, opinionated, and just wonderful. I really admire her and continue to admire her after her passing. I want to be like Gwen.
Oh, that's so sweet. So do you have any favorite collections of any kind in your home?
Yeah, I have a collection of vintage cameras that's on my mantle in our bedroom. And that's really fun. Some of them are cameras that my husband's family owned. And a lot of them are ones that I've collected through the years. But they're fun because, time has gone by. People just use their phones anymore, but the cameras are just lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of nice to cherish that history in your own family.
For sure.
Love that. Okay. What is your proudest accomplishment?
I would say I'm really proud of being able to multitask, and I'm proud that I have a career that I can support my family with. while also being a wife and mother, while also getting a chance to make art. And I feel really fortunate for all those things because I know those things aren't necessarily available to everybody. So I should say, rather than accomplishment, I feel very lucky to be able to have all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I hear, in a lot of my guests, they're so grateful that we get to do this.
Right.
It's just such a joyful thing. And it's not available to everyone. So.
No, for sure.
Okay. And do you have any furry friends in your studio?
We have a 1-year-old Newfoundland who I mentioned is a very naughty boy. He does get me out walking several times a day, but he is not allowed in the studio. He would love to be with me constantly in the studio, but he's not allowed in the studio. So,
and what's his name?
His name is Ajax. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. I call my dog Puppy as well, although she's 4, almost 5 years old.
Okay.
I think we'll call her Puppy forever.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for braving the lightning round robin. That was fun.
Yeah.
So I've mentioned your website at hilarygoodwin.com, where we can find all the things we've talked about today. But where's the best place for us to connect with you on social media?
Yeah. And I am on Instagram. I'm not on other social media, or not really sharing my artwork on other sites. So at this point, that is where you can find me. Yeah.
On Instagram. So that's Entropy Always Wins on Instagram. Can
Correct.
you tell us, what does that mean to you? Entropy.
Yeah. People, it sounds kind of depressing because entropy always wins means things kind of devolve into chaos.
Yeah.
My meaning behind it kind of means entropy always wins, but you should still make and live a beautiful life. I'm really aware about how delicate and short life is.
Yeah.
Our lives and these beautiful things we spend hours on will not last forever. Mm-hmm. And to me, that makes them all the more beautiful. Yeah. And my encouragement for people is to continue to make and to continue to live those beautiful, make beautiful things, live a beautiful life, even if they're not forever.
Yeah. I've heard so many moments in this podcast episode it's about the journey, right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so now as we wrap up, what do you want people to take away most from our conversation today?
Again, I would say that if you are quilting, you are part of the quilting family, and you're an important part of the quilting family, whether you've received an award for that, whether you get a like on social media, whether, you get a quilt into Quiltcon. None of that matters. You are part of the quilting family and an important part of that. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Such a good message to end with. Well, Hilary, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Brandy. Appreciate it.
So that was my show with Hilary Goodwin, an ER doctor whose quilts are bravely telling stories we all need to hear, and stories that so many of us can feel in our bones. When she spoke about her 2020 vision quilts, I found myself trying to imagine what frontline workers have carried through those years. And honestly, I don't think most of us truly can. If you're a frontline worker listening right now in any capacity, thank you, truly. Your service matters more than words can say. What absolutely delighted me about Hilary is her deep sense of community, the way she chooses to give her award winnings to charity, and how her making is rooted not just in personal healing, but in service to others. Quilting is clearly her love language, a way to care for her own mental health while also lifting up the world around her. So many of us turn to quilting or any other calm, methodical craft to process life, to ease stress, to work through the hard stuff, and to offer something meaningful back. Hilary's work does that beautifully. Her quilts don't whisper, they speak out loud. And today I loved having the chance to share her story with you. Scotland is calling. Picture this. You're standing on the ramparts of Edinburgh Castle, the Scottish Highlands stretching before you. In your hand, a tartan handbag with fabric and hardware you picked yourself. This isn't just a dream. It's our tour of Scotland to the Festival of Quilts, and it's happening July 21st, 2026. Imagine 13 days where every moment inspires you. You'll cruise legendary Loch Ness, ride the breathtaking West Highland Railway, and create your own tartan handbag in downtown Edinburgh. Watch border collies herd sheep on a working farm, explore natural dyeing at artisan studios in Glasgow, and here's the best part. You'll spend an entire day with Joe Avery at the magnificent Great Tapestry of Scotland, learning hand-stitch techniques you will love. Then cap it all off with 3 full VIP days at the Birmingham Festival of Quilts. This is Scotland at a meaningful pace, time to create, connect with fellow quilters, and soak in inspiration that will inspire you for years to come. Don't wait, spaces are limited. Call the team at Opulent Quilt Journeys today. 1-877-235-3767. That's 1-877-235-3767. Or email info@opulentquiltjourneys.com. Scotland is calling. Your quilting adventure awaits. Thank you for listening to the Quilter on Fire podcast. Remember to rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps me reach more quilters just like you, striving for that perfect quilty lifestyle. Click on those 5 stars and share what you loved most about today's episode. Don't forget to hit the follow button if you haven't already. With new episodes dropping weekly, you won't want to miss out on the inspiring stories and tips we have in store. Until next time, dream big and have fun in the studio with the Quilter on Fire.